Example 3. In the diagram, ABCD is a square with 4 congruent sides and 4, that's a typo, right angles. R, S, T, and U are the midpoints of the sides of ABCD. Now, midpoint we may or may not know. It means the point in the middle, which means it's going to be cutting it in half. So if this is a midpoint, then I know that this and this are congruent because it cuts it in half, and then that's going to be true for all the other sides as well. And then it says also we know that RT is perpendicular to SU. So RT is perpendicular to SU. Keep in mind that means that we're going to be hitting at a 90-degree angle. And SV is congruent to VU. So SV is congruent to VU. So that's what we know. Part A says prove that triangle SVR is congruent to UVR. Okay, so it doesn't say we have to write a 2-column proof, but we're still going to kind of like block it out and show all the information we need. If we're proving that these are congruent, I'm probably going to be trying to do this by side angle side. So I already know that in the red triangle, SV is congruent to UV in the blue one, and I know that because it's given. They told me that right there. That's a side. Now I need an angle. Well, the angle I'm probably looking at here is right here, because if these lines are perpendicular, then I know that they hit at a 90-degree angle. So now I can say that angle SVR is congruent to angle UVR, and the reason is all right angles are congruent. Now I need another side, and it has to be the side that's attached essentially to that right angle, which is going to be right here. So I know that RV is congruent to RV, and the reason I know that is because they're the same side. So RV has to be the same length as RV, and that is the reflexive property. So my last statement here is going to be that triangle SVR is congruent to triangle UVR, and the reason is because of the side angle side congruence property. Part B. Prove that triangle BSR, so BSR, is congruent to triangle DUT, so DUT. So for this one, I know that the large shape on the outside is a square. Because it's a square, I know that it has 4 right angles, so I know that those are congruent. Then I'm going to go back to this idea that all of these points here are midpoints. And remember we said that midpoints kind of cut stuff in the middle. So if this is a square, I know that BC is congruent to AD because squares have the same sides, or the same length sides, and then S cuts it in half, and U cuts it in half, which means this guy has to be congruent to that side because we started with the same total length, and then we cut it in half. So my first statement is going to be that BS is congruent to UD. And for that one, we're just going to say definition of midpoint. So that's one of our sides. Then I'm going to use my right angle, and I'm going to say that angle SBR is congruent to angle UDT. And the reason, once again, is all right angles are congruent. Last but not least, we need one more side. So I'm going to use the same reasoning that I did before, and I'm going to say, well, if I have a square, then I know that side BA, the whole side, is congruent to CD because it's a square. Then it told me that R and T are midpoints, which means it took that side length and cut it in half, which means that BR has to be congruent to TD, which I put 2 tick marks technically because it's a square. I could have just put 1 because they're all going to be congruent to each other. So then I can say that BR is congruent to DT. And the reason, once again, we're just going to say definition of midpoint. And then at that point, we have enough information. We have a side, we have an angle, we have a side. Notice when you do these proofs, the better you can be about ordering. So step 1 was a side, step 2 was an angle, step 3 was another side. So then in step 4, when I actually write this, triangle BSR is congruent to triangle DUT, and I give my reason of side, angle, side, that they're all in order. I first gave you a side, I second gave you an angle, I third gave you a side. So if it's possible to do that, it's just cleaner and neater and better understood.